Today's picture booking episode features host Shawna J.C. Tenney and author-illustrator Pete Oswald. Here's a taste of where today's conversation goes.
In the beginning, I tried a lot of different styles, like, what would be the best style to portray this book? And I ultimately landed on this watercolor feel because it is, when watercolor hits a page, it is kind of like emotion itself, right? So it kind of flows, and there's all these like happy accidents and all these areas that you don't expect to find. And I thought that was a really great relationship to the tone of this book, to the kind of the idea about this book is just like letting your emotions work through yourself, and you're going to find things that you didn't know about yourself before. And that's the same thing with watercolor. Hi, my name is Pete Oswald. I'm an author and illustrator, and I'm excited to talk about my latest and most personal project to date called Noise Inside Boys, a story about big feelings.
Welcome to the Picture Booking Podcast, a show that celebrates children's books by chatting with those who make them. Whether you're a fan of this medium or a creator, you'll find inspiration and insights here. To make guest suggestions and picture book recommendations, subscribe to the Picture Booking newsletter at picturebooking.com/listen. And now, let's join Shawna J.C. Tenney inside the Mulva Library Studio on the campus of St. Norbert College for today's talk. Enjoy.
Pete, I'm assuming most of our audience kind of knows a lot of your work. You have a lot of work out there. But just in case, tell us a little bit about some of the things you've done and some of the work you have out there, just so they're kind of familiar with what you do.
So I am an illustrator and author, but mostly an illustrator. And I have illustrated the Food Group series, collaborated with author Jory John. So we have the Bad Seed, the Good Egg, the Smart Cookie, the Couch Potato, and the Cool Bean and Sour Grape. And now our next character is the Big Cheese. So that is a great series that a lot of people have expressed their love for, and that's a really fun series to work on. I've also illustrated the Underwear Dragon series with author Scott Rothman, and I've worked on many other series as well. But I have my picture book that I've written and illustrated is Hike, and it's a wordless picture book that I did a couple years ago, but that's also out there as well. Yeah.
Before we started kind of our interviewers, we were talking about that we're both from Utah originally. Was I just have to know, was Hike because you grew up in Utah at all?
Yeah, definitely inspired by hiking the mountains of Utah. My family's very outdoorsy, and that's what we would do. On our vacations, we would go backpacking and hiking, and it was all about inspired by a day in the life of going driving up to the mountain and experiencing nature and coming back home. So yeah, I was all inspired by that.
That's cool. Okay, so let's talk about the Noise Inside Boys, and tell our audience a little bit about what this book is about.
Sure. So the Noise Inside Boys is, like I said, is one of my most personal projects to date, and it is centered around emotional literacy. I believe that we all need a vocabulary to describe our inner feelings and experiences. Without that, we can't communicate effectively. So it's when you can name your feelings, you can begin to understand them. And I think as I'm a father of 3 boys, and it's something especially I think that is overlooked with boys in general, is talking about our feelings and really understanding how we feel, right? And I think a lot of times, including myself, even adult men, you ask them, how do they feel? There's like three emotions. It's like happy, sad, or mad, or frustrated, or whatever,
Yeah.
happy or sad or mad. There's like three feelings, but really there's this whole spectrum. And if we can understand how we feel, we can communicate better. We can effectively communicate much better.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when I read this. Like, I feel like people have been trying to have like more conversations to, like, especially for boys, like, show your emotions, but I still think it's like a big problem in our society with just telling boys not to have emotion and hide your emotion, that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really great book that's needed. You talked about having your own boys.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that kind of where your story came from? Interactions with your boys? For
sure. The story is, it was all kind of initiated by a poem that I wrote for my three sons. I have a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, and 11-year-old. And it was all just about like wanting to give them the space to feel. And I wrote this little short poem. And then I started to think about, like, oh, you know what, this could be a really important picture book. Like we could turn this into a picture book and really rely on, the illustrations and the narrative to help tell a story that is, I think for me, it was really important that it wasn't too didactic, like it's not an instructional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm speaking from my own personal experiences, being a father of boys, being a male myself, growing up, in the 80s and 90s. And a lot of times we were, you're told, be tough, don't show your emotion. And I think, being tough is showing your emotion, and understanding the emotion, really understanding, like getting to the root of how you're feeling and be able to express that. And to me, takes way more courage than just putting up a wall and saying, oh, I'm tough. I'm not going to show any emotion.
Right. If you do that, it's going to make things worse later when you maybe explode and
for sure. Yeah.
And can't express your emotions in the right way. Tell us a little bit about the father and son relationship in this book and how it kind of helped develop the story.
So the father and son relationship, in the book, it starts off with three brothers playing on the beach, and the two older brothers are kicking the soccer ball around, and the youngest one is building a sandcastle, and the ball kind of inexplicably rolls and breaks the younger one's sandcastle, and the younger one runs off, in sadness and frustration, and the father is trying to, kind of be that in between person of trying to give him support the younger one, but also support the older ones, and being kind of a conduit of emotion. And really it's like, I think as a father, as a parent, it's, giving our kids permission to feel, and so they can, harness that emotional literacy and become more resilient and cope better with life's tough moments, because there's always going to be a time in everyone's life that our sandcastle gets broken, right? Like that's just, it's a metaphor. And I think learning to deal with those emotions and being a parent is kind of not judging. I think that it's important in this book that there's no judgment with how we feel or how we emote. As long as we're not hurting somebody else or ourselves, then it's okay to cry, or it's okay to be angry. It's kind of allowing ourselves to feel that stuff. And I think as parents, it's easy to be like, oh, don't cry. It's, it's, blah, it's like, it's all right. Let's sit in that moment and understand what we're feeling. And so the parent in this book, the idea of that is allowing the child to explore those feelings and be that explorer, just to kind of like open the door, open the conversation. And ultimately, I hope that that's what this book does, is that it, it'll hopefully open a conversation. That's all. I see it as a conversation starter, that you're, laying with your children and reading a book together, and maybe then, or maybe somewhere down the road, it might just help a conversation. I know it's not going to necessarily solve anything, but maybe it's a tool to help talk about our different emotions between a child and a parent. So I think that's kind of was the idea around this, and using my own experiences as a father and as a male to talk about emotion.
Yeah. So you've illustrated lots of books before, and this is this the first one that actually has words that you've written?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so The Hike was a wordless picture book. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of the text is pretty sparse, but there's a beautiful rhyme to it and a rhythm. Was it always a rhyming book, and was the rhyming hard? Tell us a little bit about developing the manuscript.
That's a really great question. Yeah, so it was the poem that I originally wrote for my sons had a lot of rhyming in it. And as we started to lay the book out, we started to stripped a lot of the rhymes, and then we actually stripped a lot of the text too, so that the pictures could play a part in telling the story. And I think, as a picture book maker, that's the magic of picture books. It's when, words and illustrations come together. They're both powerful in themselves, but when they come together, they create something new. And ultimately, that's why I love this medium, and that's what we were trying to do with The Noise Inside Boys is, let some of the pictures and the illustrations do the heavy lifting of the storytelling, because a lot of times with emotions, it is very subjective, very personal. So I thought that it could be good for the reader to kind of take his or her own idea from that and, let that kind of play through. So leaving some of the text out actually seemed to help.
I know that writing in rhyme and writing a good picture book in rhyme is difficult to do.
Yeah.
Did you have to get help with the rhythm, or were you pretty good at that up front?
I did have some help with that for sure. My editor Maria was great, and kind of coming in and adding little sprinkles of ideas here and there. Maria Madugo she's incredible, and just was able to kind of see the potential of this book from the very beginning, even kind of before I could, which, that's her superpower as an editor. Yeah, she was able to kind of direct me in ways to, make it feel rhymey, but not too much. I think it's a really fine line of, making it kind of bounce a little, the text can be a little too bouncy, but making it feel solid, but have a nice rhythm and flow to it.
Yeah. I was thinking about how a lot of your books are kind of, that you've illustrated, are a lot more humorous in nature. Mm-hmm. And this one's kind of a more solemn subject. So tell us kind of the difference in creating this book versus maybe something that's more funny, I guess.
No, that's really perceptive of you. And it is true. A lot of the books that I've illustrated before are very comedic and super fun. And I love that side. I love creating visual puns and creating funny gags. I've worked in animation for the past 20 years while alongside doing picture books. And so that just kind of comes naturally to me. But then there's this side of me that loves making emotional and heartfelt content. And I was able to explore kind of a different side of myself through creating this picture book, which was really satisfying. I kind of had to like peel back some layers of it was almost like a therapy for myself too, and I would, I'd write, different versions and start to illustrate, and I'd show my sons and we would kind of talk about it and have, like little interactive. So they were part of the process of me creating this as well, which was, really fun, especially in this virtual world that we're living in, where I'm working from home and they're constantly kind of looking over my shoulder at what I'm working on. So it was really fun to share that experience with them and to kind of explore this like new like genre that I haven't really had the time to explore.
That's cool. I love the color in this book. And so there's like the in the now part, like with the boys, the boys playing on the beach, and then they go home and the boy talking to his dad and stuff. And like you said, his sandcastle gets ruined, so he's feeling angry and sad. So in this part of the book, you kind of use I like how you use kind of like a limited palette, and you had the main boy wearing red. Tell us a little bit about your thought process on the colors that you chose for this part of the book.
Yeah, color theory was really important while creating, the illustrations of this book. Just as music can kind of lead our emotions and tell us how to feel, color can do the same way. And I think there's, especially in the portion where it's more of kind of it's kind of the flashback of the book where the father's talking with the son, and it goes through these different moments. Every one of those spreads and every color was very specific to the emotion. The angry page, he's red. The more solemn one, it's more muted. There's a little spot of him feeling envious, so it's green. There's one of him feeling very sad where he's burying his pet fish, and it's blue. So all of the emotions are tied with color. So I really wanted to expand on that. And then with giving the boy the kind of the red shirt, it was just more of making him stand out. The other two brothers were kind of in cool colors, and the youngest one was in red, and he has a red, sand bucket. And so I wanted him to stand out.
Yeah. It was effective. But yeah, you were talking about the emotion pages and how they're like in they're all sort of like monochromatic, depending on the emotion. And I thought that just like really helped like the feel of each emotion.
Yeah, that and we wanted to make that feel separate from like the present moment, beats, where everything in the present time was kind of more colorful. And then once we go into the flashbacks, they're all monochromatic. They're all specific to that color and the emotion that the boy is going through. And then there's the watercolor feel that I did most of this book with, like, watercolor scans, and then I touched them up digitally. So it has this like very watercolor feel to it that is, which in the beginning I tried a lot of different styles, like, what would be the best style to portray this book. And I ultimately landed on this watercolor feel because it is, when watercolor hits a page, it is kind of like emotion itself, right? So it kind of flows, and there's all these like happy accidents and all these areas that you don't expect to find. And I thought that was a really great relationship to the tone of this book, to the kind of the idea about this book, is just like letting your emotions work through yourself, and you're going to find things that you didn't know about yourself before. And that's the same thing with watercolor.
Yeah, the watercolor really, I thought, really helped with the emotions. So That was a good choice. So I noticed a fun little Easter egg that you put in there. When we're in the boys' room, I love how you can see that he has been planning to make this sandcastle. Like, he has castle books, he has like all these drawings that he's done. He has blocks in a castle, and so I love that, that you can see that this was so important to him. But I love how that you put the little Easter egg of the underwear dragon and the knight on his shelf.
Yeah, it's always fun to to put in little Easter egg that viewers like yourself will catch, and if they don't, great, it's fine, but it's I think it's kind of a reward for people that, like, oh yeah, I know that character. But it's also and I'm glad that you picked up on that idea, because I did want to have the idea of when the boys' sandcastle gets broken, that there's he's really into engineering. He loves building stuff. So I wanted to emphasize that, to really make it that, it's a big deal that he was thinking about this sandcastle for a while, and he was planning it, and then the soccer ball came and knocked it over. And it's not like I don't think the older brothers were doing it on purpose. It just kind of happened, but it still made him, feel the way he did, creating the stakes and just making it that much more important to the younger boy.
Yeah. It really did up the stakes, like, for his emotions. We've talked a little bit about like changing tones of your books, but how has it been in creating the whole book versus doing just the illustrations for a book?
It's much more difficult. One, I'm not primarily a writer, so I'm flexing new muscles that I haven't flexed before, and it's been really fun, but very difficult. And I kind of have to switch my brain back and forth from author to illustrator, and then also step back and look at it like as a whole. So that part of it has been very satisfying, but also there's been a lot of ups and downs, a big learning curve, because I haven't written much before this, but it's like I said, it's been really satisfying to do such a personal project that means so much to me, and is based on my experiences and based on being a parent. So it's really special.
Do you think this book would have helped you as a kid?
Definitely. I think like I said, growing up in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of at least I never really came across books or even films or anything that kind of like TV shows that talk about, other than like Mr. Rodgers, which I grew up on and which I love, that didn't necessarily talk about these types of ideas that were focused on boys. And I don't necessarily like, this book is not for boys. It's for everyone. It is, the title isn't The Noise Inside Boys, but I don't want to exclude girls by any chance. Like that's definitely not the idea. The idea is that we all feel emotions, and because I have 3 sons and because I'm a male, I chose to kind of focus on that specific idea. But I do think, I'm getting ready to go read to a bunch of schools, and I don't want the girls to feel left out by any means, because it is at the end of the day, it's just about emotions, and it's about learning our emotions and being able to communicate.
So we talked a little bit about the difference between you just illustrating a book and then writing and illustrating a book. What have you enjoyed about creating books? I know that you've done a lot of like animation things. Mm-hmm. What do you like about creating books versus doing animation projects?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So I think there's, making, say, animated films versus picture books. There's a lot of similarities, right? We're telling a story, we're evoking some type of emotion. A lot of time there's comedic beats, a lot of time there's emotional beats. And at the end of the day, you're telling a story. And I love telling stories. So I like, both mediums. The cool thing with picture books is that the teams are much smaller. With making an animated film, I'm working with hundreds of incredibly talented artists and technicians and producers, and it's a really cool kind of process because you get to collaborate with a lot of people. Like if you look at those credits on the back of any animated film, they're long, and it's really fun to create that with such a large group. But there's something about picture books that becomes that much more intimate and satisfying in a way that we're, especially on this book where I was just working mainly with myself and my editor, my art director, bouncing a few ideas, but a lot of times I would just be in my office and thinking about stuff and sketching and writing notes and really analyzing and kind of working through my own ideas. So I love both process, making animated films and making picture books, but there's something really satisfying about kind of working in a smaller, more intimate, even just, when I'm illustrating a book, I'm working close with the author and kind of back and forth. It's just on a much kind of more, smaller and more intimate scale.
Yeah. And it sounds like creating this book in particular was like a really introspective process for you.
For sure. Yeah. I've been, it's made me, look into myself even more and kind of peel back the layers, as a parent, as a male, and as a person, because I don't care how old we are, it's still the idea of emotional literacy and realizing how we're feeling and being able to communicate how we're feeling is effective at any age that any person is. I think it's just a life skill that we are like constantly working on.
Yeah. I feel like this picture book would be good for a lot of adults who grew up in that time when we didn't have a lot of that. I also love Mr. Rodgers, and
it's so good.
I have a book of his that I've been just reading his quotes and stuff. Really good stuff.
There's one quote that I have up in my office. Can I read it? And it was a quote that that really helped me throughout this process. And it goes like this. I'm convinced that when we help our children find healthy ways of dealing with their feelings, ways that don't hurt them or anyone else, we're helping to make our world a safer, better place. Yes. And I have it pinned up on my wall where, I just felt like that's a good reminder of, and a good kind of goal of, as I was creating this, I love his work.
Yeah.
And it was really special.
Really? Yes, for sure. So do you think we'll be seeing more books written and illustrated by you?
I hope so. I definitely, I love it. And yeah. So yes, for sure. In the future, I've got a couple ideas, working on right now, but, yes, for sure.
Good. And is there you said that you have another book in the food series coming out soon?
Yeah. The Big Cheese.
The Big Cheese.
Comes in November. It's going to be fantastic. A new food group character. So yeah, it'll be really, really hilarious and a great addition to all of the whole series.
Yeah. Are there any other books that you have coming out that you can tell us about, or?
Sure. Yeah. I have, Sleepy Sheepy that would just just came out with Lucy Ruth Cummings, and that one is a great bedtime story. So that one's going to be really fun. And there's a couple other books coming out later this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's exciting. When you do school visits, do you talk a lot about the books that are recently coming out, or do you have like a set just talk that's just basically about writing books? Or
yeah, so it depends on which book I'm usually reading at that time. A lot of my visits I've done with the food group, so I have a kind of a presentation about how Jory, John, and I work together and how we collaborate, and a little bit about our process, which is so cool, because I think it's important for everyone, especially kids, to kind of see how these things are made, behind the scenes. So that's really fun to explain that and see their little minds turn. It's cool.
Yeah. With the Noise Inside Boys, are you going to do something different with that?
Yeah, I'm it's funny you ask, because I'm in process of kind of figuring out how to approach this. I think a lot of it's going to be based on just talking about emotion, and then talking about how I created this and why I created it, the different colors and the medium that I chose, and just the idea of if we can name our emotions, then we're that much closer to dealing with them.
Yeah. That will be great, and like empowering kids
for sure. I mean, I think that's at the end of the day, we want to make each generation stronger and better communicators, and empower them, to be better people.
Yeah. Talked a lot about what this book will do when people read it, but just kind of tell us again what you hope kids and parents will get out of this book when they read.
Yeah, I think that, The Noise Inside Boys is a story about emotional literacy, and I hope that this book will open a conversation and be some type of gateway to communicating our emotions, and helping our young ones help communicate their emotions, and hopefully empower them to be better people.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, there are a few ways to help Picturebooking out and shape what this show is. You can subscribe and rate the podcast on whatever player you are listening to right now, and send this episode to your book friends. Have you read a fantastic book lately, or have a creator in mind that we need to have on? Subscribe to the Picturebooking newsletter at picturebooking.com/listen, and we'll let you know when we are ready to book future episodes.